Johnston. So he's a dietitian with a particular interest in whole food, plant-based living and lifestyle medicine. And tonight we're going to speak about a topic that's near and dear to his heart, dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And I think that this is such an important topic to speak about, because when you look at the statistics, it's, all of us are going to be touched by this in some way or other in our life. And tonight we have the huge fortune of being able to listen to an expert who's going to teach us some of the ways that we can help prevent and avoid having such a debilitating and horrible impact on our life. So thank you so much, Dr. Johnston.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. And welcome everybody. Thank you for making time this evening. I'm speaking to you from Melbourne. So I'll get started. This is my background. I've studied in New Zealand, where I'm from, and then my third degree was the doctorate in human genetics at ANU, and then I went to North America for 5 years and came back and did the Masters in Nutrition at Wollongong Uni. And then during COVID, I did a lot of study to get my fellowship in lifestyle medicine. So I now run a private practice as a dietitian and practice lifestyle medicine, which I'll explain if you don't know about it. And I also run retreats and give a lot of talks like this to community groups and conferences, and a few other food-related projects. And I also do a lot of work for Doctors for Nutrition, who are a health charity that are working to put awareness of nutrition into the medical system, because most doctors get almost zero food training. So the overview of the talk, you can see I'll go through these things, context, definitions, diagnosis, etc., and give you a general overview about the diseases that comprise dementia and what we think are the causative factors and the best ways we know from the research so far to prevent getting dementia. Even with early onset dementia, there is now a peer-reviewed randomized controlled trial showing it can be reversed, but only at early stage. So in terms of our greatest health fears, I think for a lot of people, it's probably losing our mental functions. Cancer terrifies me. I really don't want to get that. It keeps me motivated to live healthily and well. Heart disease, diabetes, or becoming a paraplegic or quadriplegic, whatever. But losing our mind, I think, is terrifying for a lot of people. So the brain's amazingly complex, 87 billion neurons, up to a quadrillion neural connections. That's 1,000,000 billion. Each neuron can have as few as 2 connections or up to 30,000. Brain cells rejuvenate, they resist damage, and they support growth at any age. We can reform connections, we can improve brain function and increase a cognitive capacity at any age. So the brain's a very hungry organ. It's only 20% of our body weight, yet it consumes 20% of the oxygen we breathe and about 20% of the energy that our whole body uses. And it receives up to 20% of the body's blood supply, and it has on its own about 650 kilometers of blood vessels. So it's a really hungry organ. As such, it's more exposed to damage, as I'll mention further in. So dementia, in terms of definitions, is an umbrella term for a wide variety of ways the brain can be damaged, from Alzheimer's disease to Lewy body, Parkinson's, alcohol-related, and there's also the damage that footballers get with being knocked out, being unconscious. So dementia is caused by brain damage, the damage to brain cells that affects their ability to communicate, and affects our thinking and behavior and feelings. It's very important to note, though, that dementia is a disease symptom, not a normal part of aging. Alzheimer's is a specific form of dementia and the major one, about 60 to 80% of cases. So it's the most common form, and it's characterized by these things you've probably heard of, the amyloid plaques and tau tangles. So there are about 100 diseases that can cause dementia. So there's some I mentioned, and the one that footballers and cricketers can get with knocks to the head, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy dementia. There's also vascular dementia, which is very linked to the heart disease that kills most of us. Alcohol-related and HIV-associated, so many types. So in terms of diagnosis, there's no one test, and it's quite complicated. It needs a careful medical history, physical exam, lab tests, and measuring characteristic changes in thinking, day-to-day function, and behavior associated with each type. It can take decades to build up before it's diagnosable, and it seems to be the result of an accumulation of damage to the brain over a lifetime. For example, heart disease, we know it begins in childhood. When 10-year-old kids who die in trauma, like a car vehicle accident, are autopsied, you can already see fatty streaks in the heart of all of those kids, 100% of them, if they're on a typical Western diet. So there's heart disease in all 10-year-olds, essentially. The vascular damage will also be beginning in the brain. Is all the blockage in the heart is just one part of the body. There's blockage at different extents throughout the whole body. So the incidence of dementia, 55 million people globally. Most of these live in the low to middle income countries. Nearly 500,000 cases in Australia 3 years ago. It's just been recently announced that it's now the leading cause of death for Australians. I heard this a few weeks ago. And it's a huge employer of people caring for those with dementia. Most times it occurs after 65, but about in 1 in 10 cases, people under 65 develop dementia. In 9% of cases, symptoms appear before age 65. Disproportionate impact on women, 65% of total deaths. We don't know why this is. And women also, unsurprisingly, but not ideally, provide the bulk of the caring hours. So in Australia, it's forecast to double by 2058. This is an often quoted figure. I'm not sure why they picked that date. It's a pretty random year. Huge impact on carers and a huge impact on a healthcare system, and a very expensive disease to care for. Globally, we're looking at the cost is 1.3 trillion in 2019, expected to more than double by 2030. In Australia, $3 billion in 2018-19, expected to go to 26 billion over the next 20 years. So in terms of the risk factors, there are some that are not modifiable. So your age, we can't avoid the march of time. And genetics, we can't change our genes, although, as I'll talk about later, we can change our epigenetics. And this was something that we didn't have any idea about when I did my PhD in genetics back in the late 80s. There's also your family history. So if you have a history in the family, you're at more risk. And as I mentioned, women are at more risk than men. And these things are not changeable. That's your lot. In terms of the modifiable risk factors, there are a lot. And these things we can have a big control over. So diet, exercise, smoking, alcohol, weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, levels of ongoing cognitive engagement, social isolation. And if you're a partner of someone with Alzheimer's, you're 600% more likely to develop the disease. And that's probably because the partners would have a similar lifestyle. So in lifestyle medicine, there's this saying that genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So it's thought for most of the chronic diseases that afflict us in the modern world, genetics might be 5% or so, that the rest is lifestyle. So what about genetics then? people think that there's an inevitability to this. Well, the common allele that people are aware of that confers an increased risk of Alzheimer's is ApoE4. So if you don't have any of those genes or alleles, you've got the standard 50% chance of Alzheimer's by age 85. If you have one copy of that gene, you have 50% chance by 75. And if you have both copies, then you have a 50% chance by 65. But keep in mind, only 2% of people have two copies of this. Even then, it doesn't guarantee that you will develop Alzheimer's. This presenilin 1 and 2 genes are more serious, as is the amyloid precursor protein gene. So they confer an especially high risk of Alzheimer's, but they're very rare, less than 1% of all cases. So the takeout from that is genes are certainly not destiny. Epigenetics is fascinating. So this is the binding of histones into the DNA, which affect the ability of the DNA to be read, to be transcribed and produce proteins. So effectively, epigenetic changes can either shut genes down where they don't produce any proteins which might cause problems, or they can be activated and be more available to be read and produce proteins that either are helpful or harmful. And lifestyle affects epigenetics massively. So the sequence has not changed, but they change how the body can read the DNA sequence. So this is a part that we didn't understand when I was doing genetic research. So this is an example. Dean Ordish, who some of you might have heard of, he was the first one to show that heart disease could be reversed in randomized controlled trial, and published in peer-reviewed journal, The Lancet, in 1990. He's also done amazing other work, but he used his lifestyle medicine program, which is plant-based, with exercise and stress management and social connection. And they showed the change in gene expression of 500 genes beneficially affected with healthy living. So they shut down oncogenes, which promote cancer, genes involved in heart disease, inflammation, oxidative stress, cholesterol metabolism, angiogenesis were also downregulated. So this is very powerful research showing how we live can dramatically affect our risks of many of the major diseases. So in terms of the causes of dementia or Alzheimer's, it's thought that there are 4 major processes that play the major part in this. And obviously there's lots of ongoing research, but this is the state of the understanding at this stage, as far as I've read. So each of these I'll go through briefly. So inflammation, you'll know if you get a bruise, that's inflammation. Your bruise area goes red, the body's rushing in resources to heal it. So it's natural to have acute inflammation, but chronic inflammation is very harmful. And a lot of people in the modern world have chronic systemic inflammation from poor diet and poor lifestyle, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, too much stress, etc. And so they're chronically inflamed through the whole body. And this is damaging over the long term. Oxidation, so that's like this apple on the right. When exposed to oxygen, there are changes happen, free radicals, and the area oxidizes. So this happens in our body as well, because we run on oxygen and the brain consumes so much, like around 20% of our body's oxygen is used by the brain. So normal processes that neutralize these free radicals caused by oxidation are damaged by poor diet, lack of exercise, chronic disease, lack of sleep. So you can see there's a pattern here. The third one is the glucose dysregulation. So that's the high blood sugar that is characterized in diabetes and pre-diabetes and gestational diabetes. So this is insulin resistance. The insulin can't do its job of taking the glucose out of the blood into the tissues. where it's needed, especially the muscles. So you're producing extra insulin, trying to get that the sugar levels down. It impairs the ability of our bodies to clear harmful waste products. It's worse in the brain again because of that very high energy use. And those overly high insulin levels lead to damage like inflammation, oxidation, and lipid dysregulation. So these 4 processes are interconnected. And diabetes, for example, leads to a much higher risk of cognitive decline. So the 4th one is lipid or fat dysregulation. Half of the brain's dry weight is fat. So this is mainly characterized by elevated cholesterol levels, which is epidemic in the modern world because of the way we eat and live. So this leads to vascular disease, but it also promotes the formation of these amyloid plaques. And vascular disease itself, as I alluded to earlier, is a major risk factor for dementia, getting the vascular dementia, and microstrokes can happen that cumulatively take out little sectors of the brain. So below the level where you'd notice any changes, but maybe 0.5% of your brain is knocked out with a microstroke, and over many years they can gradually reduce your cognitive capacity. So in summary, the cumulative trauma of the lipid dysregulation, vascular disease, amyloid buildup, inflammation, oxidative stress is thought to lead to Alzheimer's. This is a summary picture. So there's the 4 aspects I just discussed, and some of the things around the outside, so stress, hypertension, poor sleep, small vessel disease, blockages, head trauma, etc. So this is the reversal that I mentioned earlier, that Dean Ornish led a study recently. It was 2024, middle of last year. So a randomized controlled trial showed that mild cognitive impairment can be reversed. First time ever shown. And he used a strictly plant-based diet. Now, they did throw the book at this. They gave them stress management and sleep and supplements and everything to get outcomes, which they did, very powerful outcomes. It was a small study and a pilot, but I suspect there'll be further studies coming where they look at which aspects are the most important. And we know diet is, but they first wanted to demonstrate that you could reverse this frightening disease. Now, this is, again, it's at the early stages. It's mild cognitive impairment. So it's thought that once you're well into the disease, that it's probably not going to be reversible. The brain is so unbelievably complex. And we don't have any good medications yet. They mainly just relieve behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. They're not really even slowing the progression of the disease. And they, like most drugs, there are side effects. Medications never do just one thing. So prevention is worth an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's Dean and Aisha Sherzai, they're PhD, MD neurologist working in Loma Linda in Southern California, where the large studies with Seventh-day Adventists have been running. They estimate that 90% of Alzheimer's disease can be prevented if these modifiable risk factors are optimized. And they describe the brain as a living universe. It responds to how you care for it, how you feed it, how you challenge it, the ways in which you allow it to rest and restore. So this is an illustration that Dean Ornish uses often, describing Western medicine. Doctors are essentially mopping the floor which is a symptom of the overflowing sink, but without looking at what the cause of the flood is. And Western medicine is typically like this. They'll diagnose what you have wrong, and then they'll give you drugs or surgery. And no disrespect to my medical colleagues, it's a very, very skilled profession, but the training doesn't involve lifestyle medicine, which is looking upstream at what's causing the problem. And that's why lifestyle medicine is so powerful, because it's not just treating symptoms, it's actually addressing upstream causes of why people are unwell. So just repeating this slide of the modifiable risk factors. So this is lifestyle medicine. So these are so-called 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine: healthy eating, physical activity, managing stress, healthy relationships, good sleep, and avoiding risky substances like alcohol, tobacco, or summarized with this list on the right. Some people, and myself, I would add a 7th one, which would be purpose. And others might add spirituality. I think having a purpose in life is really good for our well-being. But of these ones, there's 6 in this wheel. Food seems to be the biggest, but if you do any of these 6 badly, it will drag down your health. And conversely, the better you do each of them, the more likely you are to have longer good health and stay in good health. It acts like a virtuous cycle if you're improving them, and it can be a vicious cycle if any one or more of these are not being done well. So lifestyle medicine addresses upstream determinants rather than just treating symptoms. So onto some evidence. So this was a study of 3,000 people. Those who ate meat, fish or poultry had double the risk of developing dementia compared to vegetarians. So that's a big shift. Eating 5 or more portions of fruit and veggies a day, which is not much, most Australians don't do this, was significantly associated with a 47% decreased prevalence of cognitive impairment. That's a lot, a big drop. Now, I personally would have like 10 serves of veggies and 10 serves of fruit in a day. It's not hard. This study revealed that obesity in midlife increased the risk of dementia by 40%. So it's important to have a healthy weight throughout life. High insulin levels in elderly people may account for almost 40% of Alzheimer's cases. This was a study of 9,000 patients, so high cholesterol levels during midlife had a 57% higher risk of developing Alzheimer's in later life. So again, that's a really big shift. So we know from the research, particularly the long-running Framingham heart study, that if your total cholesterol is under 4, you're essentially heart attack proof. In 70 years of that study with thousands of participants, they didn't have anyone with total cholesterol under 4 who had a heart attack. And the LDL, are now thinking it should be at least under 1.8, if not lower. Men with erectile dysfunction are at much higher risk of dementia, because erectile dysfunction is analogous to heart disease. It's vascular blockage in the vessels in the penis. So as I said earlier, if the arteries in the brain are blocked or else within there's likely to be blockage in the brain. So this is from Dr. Neil Barnard. Vegetables, legumes, fruits, whole grains should replace meats and dairy products as the primary staples of the diet in terms of preventing Alzheimer's. So the solution is in your fridge. When I looked at this picture, I thought it was only fruit and veggies, and I later realized it had some milk, probably cow's milk and eggs. So ignore those. I don't think those are going to help you. We could say that's soy milk, and maybe they keep the kiwi fruit in this little egg box. So diets high in animal protein damage us. So it increases your risk of total mortality, all-cause mortality, 75%. 4 times increase in cancer risk, 5 times increase in diabetes, and significantly higher IGF-1 levels. This is a potent growth and cancer promoter. So this is work from Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. So the picture on the left, this is the left anterior descending artery, also known as the widowmaker. And this is, you can see the blockages in this artery down where it's highlighted. On the right is the same patient 32 months later. The artery is cleared, is back to normal. So this is what can happen to the vessels in the brain. that's 650 kilometers of blood vessels in our brain. We can, healthy living, this was done with a very low fat plant-based diet. So Johnston says didn't allow his patients any oils, any nuts or avocados for the duration of the program until they were back to optimum health. So there's a whole host of conditions can be treated with a whole food plant-based diet, and this is just some of them. But we now know mild cognitive impairment as well. So sleep-deprived individuals have more amyloid plaques in their brains. Exercise is very important, so up to an hour or more a day in senior citizens improve memory and reversed age-related shrinkage in the brain's memory centers. So this is keeping the brain active. So there's an inverse relationship between formal education and the incidence of Alzheimer's. And keeping your brain active and doing more than just Sudoku or crosswords, it's things like learning a language, learning a musical instrument, keeping your brain challenged with different activities and novel activities can help. But this won't replace or make up for an unhealthy diet or obesity or high cholesterol, but it will help. Social isolation, so this was about 500,000 people, average age of 57, followed for 12 years. Social isolation is linked to lower brain volume and a 26% increased risk of dementia, which is a lot. You can see the cumulative effect of doing these things well or doing them poorly can make a massive difference to whether you develop this disease or not. Stress. So chronic stress can lower levels of this brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is a protein responsible for production of new brain cells. And when we're stressed, we've got elevated cortisol and adrenaline. And when these are constantly elevated and we're always in flight or fight mode, this is linked to shrinkage of the hippocampus, which is a major part of the brain's learning and memory. So in summary, lifestyle medicine is the best prevention. Do all these things well, and you should dramatically reduce any risk of getting dementia or Alzheimer's. These are some resources that are evidence-based and trustworthy. There's a book by Dean Ornish. His most recent book is, and his wife Anne, is terrific. Any work by Dr. Michael Greger, who's with nutritionfacts.org. This is a charity, if you don't know about them, apologies if you do. They're not selling anything. They survey all the world's nutrition research every year across the whole world, the team at Nutrition Facts, and they distill it into thousands of short videos you can search by subject. And they show you the research papers. You can pause the video, look at the paper title, go to PubMed, look it up yourself if you want to read it in more detail. They also look at the quality of the research, like how well it was designed, who funded it. Is it an outlier or is it consistent with previous well-done research? All of these things add up to whether what is most meaningful in terms of science, because science is not a perfect process. It's iterative. It relies on repeating studies and building up evidence that what they're showing is more likely to be the case. Doctors for Nutrition, who I volunteer with, have great resources on their website. Any of the books by the Sherzais are terrific. And I think that's all. That's my contact information. That's Dr. Michael Greger there from nutritionfacts.org. This was a conference in San Diego in about 2017. I'm a bit older than that now. Not quite as young looking. I think that's all. So happy to finish up there and take questions if there are any, or comments.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. It's such an important topic. It's always great to listen to, and I'm glad that you referenced the Dean Ornish's research last year, because considering the outcomes that he managed to achieve, it really didn't get much airtime. it was quite extraordinary. For anyone who's interested in reading a bit more about that, we wrote about it in our spring 2024 magazine, so you can flick back to that. I'll include the link in the follow-up email. Does anyone have any questions for Peter? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly, or pop it in the chat. I could read it out if you would prefer.
While we're waiting, I'll mention also that his research in 1990 on reversing heart disease didn't get much attention either. And as Michael Greger says, it should have been front page news all over the world. He's essentially shown that our biggest killer globally is reversible.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such a shame, such powerful information, and although, like as you said, his intervention, he really did throw the book at it, but a lot of it was quite simple things that we could incorporate into our lives.
Can I excuse me, I just want to say it all seems so simple. That, you know, well, I suppose for someone who's been doing a plant-based diet for a long time, those 6 pillars just all seem pretty simple to do. But I suppose in, you know, modern lifestyle, it's not necessarily that's the way it is.
No, it's true. Our lives get busy, and people often have to work long hours, and their jobs are stressful, and they might have demanding kids, or all sorts of things can get in the way. Long commutes where there's not enough time to shop and cook or exercise. You know, I feel fortunate I can fit those things into my day and my week, but I know there are many people and patients I see who struggle to balance all of those competing demands.
Yes, and sometimes it is about the framing, isn't it? I think Dr. Greger, who you mentioned earlier, I think he posted today or yesterday talking about how not exercising for an hour a day is a high-risk activity. And many people's lives don't accommodate that even remotely. I'll just read out a question from Rita, who was asked, said, my dad had vascular dementia. Can I get a gene test from a GP?
Well, you could, but as I said, the genes are probably only 5% of the risk. And the vascular dementia is the one that's really from blockage of the blood vessels, like heart disease. And we know that's avoidable and reversible with a healthy plant-based and low-fat diet. So you could get a gene test. I mean, and see if you have the ApoE4 or the presenilin genes. But I mean, if you're doing everything as well as you can, that's all that you would be able to do if you did have those genes anyway. Like it's safest just to do those 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine as well as you can within your life and your situation, and that whether you have or don't have those risk factor genes, it's not going to play a huge role. So it's good health comes from healthy living, really. So, and I would say to patients generally that these healthy behaviors should be not negotiable, as is showering and brushing your teeth and, you know, other things, self-care things we do in each day. We need to build in time in our day to do these things, like a yoga class or a gym session or going for a walk or a run. You know, they should be seen as not negotiable, not nice to haves. But if you could spend the money on the gene test if you wanted, but they can give you, you know, the sense of risk for other things as well if you get the whole genome done. But again, the genes are what they are. Lifestyle can shut down many of the harmful ones or increase the expression of the beneficial ones if you live that healthy lifestyle. So we can't change our genetic sequence at this stage. I'm not sure if we would want to, but lifestyle will trump genes in nearly all cases.
And there's another question from Robin, which you have partly answered as well, but I'll read this out. If I had a grandparent who had dementia, does that mean I have a genetic predisposition? How do I find out?
Well, again, the genes are probably 5% roughly. It's hard to get an exact number of the risk. The rest is lifestyle. So lifestyles tend to run in families as well as genes. You might be from a book reading family rather than a sporty family, and reading books is great, but you might use your spare hours in the day to sit on the couch and read a book, which is enriching and wonderful. But and we pass our recipes down through families and the way we live and how we spend our spare time. So those things carry more risk usually than your actual genetic sequence. And many of us have dementia in our family histories. It is growing in incidence, but we all have a risk. If we're not living well, it's hard to overstate the importance of the lifestyle aspect of it, and that it is much bigger than the genetic risk.
Peter, I had a question with regards to sleep, and I can't quite remember what you called it, but is it something starting with A that builds up in the brain if we don't get enough sleep? It doesn't kind of go through the brain doesn't go through the wash cycle.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that builds up over time, and what kind of sleep can actually wash our brains?
Well, sleep is a whole complex other subject. And if you're curious, there's a really good book called Why Do We Sleep? By a sleep scientist. His name is just eluding me at the moment. I know there's a copy on my bookshelf somewhere. The book's called Why Do We Sleep? But sleep is complex. We go through various cycles during the night. The main thing is just practice good sleep hygiene so that you can have the best chance of sleeping well and sleeping deeply. And so we're designed to be diurnal daytime animals and be awake in the light and sleeping in the dark. The blue lights in the evenings can erode our sleepiness. Caffeine in the second half of the day will cannibalize our sleepiness. Many people are slow caffeine metabolizers, so we need a cool, dark, quiet bedroom. The body cools down as a precursor to sleeping, and it warms up again in the morning. So you can plot this on a graph and see the changes. We build up melatonin during the day, which precipitates sleepiness, and that declines through the night. Getting morning sunlight is important for setting our clock and helping us sleep well. Exercising as hard as you can is really good for deep sleep. And if any of you can remember when you've done a lot of physical exercise, like this Sunday, I was surfing for 2.5 hours from dawn down at Inverloch out of Melbourne, and I slept very well that night. I was very tired and I was happy and relaxed. So, I mean, exercise does so many beneficial things to us. Our immune system is improved, our microbiome's improved, our sleep's improved, our mood's improved. So sleep is vital, but doing all those things can help you sleep better. You might want to have a hot bath or a hot shower before bed. That counterintuitively cools the core. The blood goes to the periphery more and comes back cooler from the skin and can help with that cooling down before we fall asleep. Just quietening down your mind and before bed, so you might be listening to some music or reading a book, and dimming the lights, preparing for sleep. Or if sleep's hard, you could do yoga nidra, which is a deep body rotation type of meditation that you can find guided versions on YouTube to help. We'll talk you through it. It's yoga nidra is fabulous. You could do that just before bed. Sometimes when people are cogitating and their minds are racing, it helps to have a pen and paper while they get up, or turn on a not too bright light and write down what you're cogitating about, and it's essentially just parking it so your brain can relax and go, okay, for better or worse, that's there in the morning. It might look like total rubbish in the morning. What was I worried about? Or it might have been a useful idea that I was hanging on to and was preventing my sleep. So yeah, I hope that helps. But the other thing is not to stress too much about sleep, because that can be counterintuitive. I mean, counterproductive as well. So yeah, but sleep is vital. All animals sleep. Every animal ever studied, a third of their life, a third of each day we sleep roughly, and that suggests that it's been selected and hasn't decreased through evolution, which it would. If any animal could sleep less, it would give it a big advantage. More time to hunt food, gather food, more time to look after young, etc. But the fact that 8 hours of our day is required for sleep of any animal we've ever studied, it suggests it's very important evolution-wise for our well-being. Any further comments or questions? Yeah, Matthew Walker, thank you. He was the author of Why Do We Sleep? Yeah.
Yes, that's a great book, and it's got some great case studies. It's been quite a few years since I've read it from memory as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that he, as you just said, he really speaks about it's quite a risk, really, sleeping. So it shows that the importance of it.
Yeah, we're vulnerable. We're not protecting our young, we're not protecting our crops, or we're not doing all sorts of important things.
Yes, that's fantastic. And one thing that I really like, as Elizabeth mentioned before, with talks like this, that it's great to look into the detail and see some of the statistics about associated risks, but when it all boils down to it, the practical application of lifestyle medicine, those recommendations could have easily read for cardiovascular disease,
yes,
diabetes, like all of the top hits of things that we should be looking to prevent. At its core, if you take a lifestyle medicine approach, irrespective of the, as you say, genes and things that we can't change, we are addressing across the board so much to improve our life and mitigate risks. It's easy to get caught up with sort of the fanciness of a potential test that might cost us $500 when we could go and buy $500 of amazing organic plant produce. Often wonder with some people with the temptation to spend money in that way in the health field. I just think just a box of veggies for the next 5 weeks will get you started.
And same, I was talking to a patient this week who was asking me about buying berberine and curcumin, and there's no magic bullet that comes out of a pill bottle. If you're plant-based, you really only need B12 and possibly vitamin D if you don't get much sun. But berberines and barberries, I buy them from Middle Eastern shop and put some in my porridge or in a salad. I use turmeric, organic turmeric from my health food shop, and instead of buying pills with curcumin in them, there's always people trying to make money out of us with miracle fixes or cures or shortcuts. But there's no shortcut to being healthy. You just have to have consistent, healthy living. And doing these things as well as you can. And then, well, they won't ever be perfect. We'll have nights of poor sleep, or we might miss exercising or get too stressed. But do the best you can, and it can reverse any disease you have and help prolong your life and keep you out of a nursing home.
Can you say more about barberries? I saw something about them recently. I think I was reading Dr. Valtalongo's book on the longevity diet, and I think barberries might have got a mention. I've never seen or heard of them before, but they're Middle Eastern, are they?
Yeah, they're just a little thing like a currant, which is not so black looking, they're more reddish. And they're sour, tangy tasting. So they go nicely in a salad. I've only found them in Middle Eastern shops. I frequent my local Indian grocery and Iranian grocery because they have really nice additives for my meals, like curry leaves, and I get my dates from the Middle Eastern shops. They're much better than major dates, and they're much cheaper. I get, onion powder and garlic powder and smoked paprika, and check out some of their different herbs and spices. So barberries are nice. Yeah, I don't know if you can grow them in Australia. I haven't seen them elsewhere, but again, there's no one miracle plant. I buy them just for variety. Every plant has thousands of different molecules, and most of them we've never studied. There's a few that have been looked at it, like turmeric with curcumin in it, or this berberine in barberries, and they go, oh, they're good for you, but who knows what the other 9,099 ingredients in that berry or that plant are doing. We just don't know enough. So really, I think the safest thing is just eat a wide variety of whole natural plants, and organic if possible, as Rebecca said. Not the end of the world if you buy conventional, but it's probably more healthy. It's certainly more healthy for the planet. My biggest reason for eating nearly completely organic now is because pesticides seem to be the leading cause of insect population collapse, and they're collapsing. Insect populations globally are decreasing about 8 times faster than the decline in invertebrates and other animals. So, and they forecast that we might be insect free by the end of the century, and if that happens, we'll be human free as well. Like, if insects go down, we'll go with them. We need them. So I buy organics for that reason, but they're probably more healthy because these are biocidal chemicals, even if they're trace elements. And they're killing the soil. They're killing the microbes and the microbiome in the soil, which is essential for healthy plants and healthy ecosystems. Yeah, I mean, if you're spraying the soil routinely with chemicals like that, it's better described as dirt, not soil. So, yeah, but there's no. I try to buy all the different plants and fruits and grains and legumes that I can find to have more variety. Like, I found some beans at the Iranian shop this week called cranberry beans, and I've never seen them before, so I just cooked them today. And they looked a bit like borlotti beans, but with a whiter background with the pretty patterning on them. So anyway, I've got several set aside sprouting, and I'll see if I can grow them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But variety is a good cornerstone of nutrition as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and for the microbiome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. And I will, in my email out to you all tomorrow, I'll provide you with a recording link and links to all of Dr. Johnston's information as well, his website, which will show you the retreats that he's doing, as also how to get in contact with him for clinical practice. And he's a busy man with all of his various talks and things as well, so you can have a look at that. And next week we'll have Dr. Jenny Livanos talking to us, so that will be the final night of the series. It's always a pleasure to hear from her as well. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, and sleep well and deeply.
Take care.
And I'll just say hi to Robin Wheatley, who's been to one of our retreats.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm not sure if she's unmuted or not.
No. Anyway, thank you for having me as a guest and for listening. I hope it was useful for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It was really lovely to hear from you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Robin. Nice to see you.
See you again.
Take care.
Bye.
Aye.